Right, so it is day 108 of my attempt to plant a tree every single day for 2023. We're just outside Lusaka, Zambia, where I live, and let's get on with it. So this tree behind me is what we will be planting today. So more on that in just a moment. Right, so for today's planting we're going to an area just north of where I planted the K apple, and you might remember from that planting that I put a Ficus, which is a large agave related plant, just north of it to act as a marker in case anyone was coming through cutting the grass and didn't see where the small tender trees were. The reason that was necessary is because this area has a lot of very tough canes, and I often don't get around to cutting them until someone else sees that they need cutting and cuts them down, and so it's quite important that I remember to make sure there was a marker. And I did actually get around to cutting them, and I thought I would finally do something about them. So a lot of these tough canes don't have many grazers. We do have native animals that do eat them, so things like buffalo, things like zebra are very, very good at eating these incredibly tough grasses, especially late in the season when they've dried out. They're just a straw, and not much else can digest them very efficiently. Most livestock can't really, and that is actually part of the reason a lot of people burn, because these dense, heavy grasses burn very, very well, but they flush much more tender. And so after you've burned, in the middle of the dry season, you get these very tender green shoots up, and that is palatable to livestock, although it's not very nutritious for them. But that burning does tend to create a cycle where gradually you change the soil chemistry and you end up with nothing that will grow apart from those very dense, heavy grasses. Because we might one day, once these trees are a little bit bigger, be bringing livestock in, I don't particularly want to be encouraging these canes. I want to actually discourage them and encourage a lot of the smaller, more tender grasses, which these often tend to crowd out even if they're not being burned and changing the soil chemistry. So what I will be doing is I'll be planting a Winterthorn. So that will be spreading a light shade, and that should just soften the sunlight down on here, which will reduce the ability of these sort of full sun, very hard, heavy grasses to grow, and it should make it a lot more hospitable for a lot of the more tender grasses, which are much better for livestock, often much more nutritious, often have higher water content, lower silica content, and are generally just easier for most domestic animals to digest. That should help those come up, and it should make this place, first off, easier to scythe, and secondly, easier if we ever get livestock for them to get a decent meal out of. But in with that, I will be putting a Dracaena fragrans as a little shade marker, because this is a small and tender one, much smaller and more tender than the one you saw at the beginning. I'm also going to be putting in an aloe arborescens, which not only is going to protect this little tree if we do get grazing livestock, it will also protect it if a fire comes through, because the thicket that will form around the base of it has a lot of water in the leaves, and that should really slow the movement of fires and reduce the heat of the fire and reduce the chance of it seriously damaging the tree if a fire does come through here. Hopefully it never will. I'm also going to be putting in some Calico Fetchinkoi, which is a nice little toxic barrier, and also just has nice little flowers which attract a lot of the pollinators in, which is always a plus. Right, so that should be everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, thank you for watching this far anyway. I will be planting another tree tomorrow if you do want to tune in for that. And for now, I will leave you with a little clip of two dogs eating guavas by this planting. Right, so this beautiful little creature is an Atala acrea, which is just sunning itself and has just decided to close its wings. So this is one of the heliconines. So the heliconines are most notable really for their postman butterflies in South America, but a lot of the fritillaries in Europe are also part of this group, and they're generally very toxic, very brightly coloured, and very, very commonly mimicked by a whole bunch of other butterflies, which do their best to look as toxic as these, because birds learn pretty quickly that these are bitter and they will not feel great after eating them, and stop trying to. We did see the small orange acrea in one a little while ago, but yeah, I thought this is quite a pretty addition to that.